Last week, during an interview with Brazilian pop culture and media outlet Omelete, to promote their new film, The Electric State, Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars directors Joe and Anthony Russo offered insight on how the upcoming pair of Avengers films differ from their previous multi-phase saga concluding Infinity War and Endgame, describing the duology as a new beginning. Joe Russo went on to reiterate the real motivation for the creative duo returning to the franchise after leaving on an all-time high more than 5 years ago. It was, quote, the right story. Only seasoned Marvel vets have mastered the ability to convey so much meaning by revealing so little. Do these hints put us in an eclectic, electric state of excitement?
That's a Scotty joint right there.
Yeah.
I can feel it.
Yes, chef.
Yes, chef.
That's right. Yes, chef.
We found the bit of the week.
I know, that's going to get me every time. This episode's just called Yes, Chef. Hashtag Yes, Chef. Yeah, I mean, this comes out, and immediately the first thing that comes out from the fandom is the dreaded or hopeful word, depending on your perspective, which is reboot. And I think a lot of the conversation around these words were that. It was, is he implying that this is a reboot of the MCU, that this is a opportunity to maybe bring some characters like Captain America and Iron Man and Black Widow and all of these characters that we've built through other actors that have gone on in our story to do other things and leave the universe? Is this an opportunity to bring those characters back and reboot the universe? And I think that elicits different responses, right? I mean, I think people are either going to hear that and be very offended and very angry at the idea that you would essentially, in their mind, throw away decades of storytelling and onto the trash heap and start over. And then you have people that would look at it from a perspective and just sort of have the attitude of a reboot might be nice. It might be nice for some freshness. It might be nice to bring in some fresh things and some fresh faces and bring in the X-Men all together and not have to do the whole drawn out thing of bringing them in slowly and watching other characters leave while that's happening and whatever. And so that conversation happened for sure around these comments. I tend to think that they didn't mean that they weren't really implying that this would be that level of a reset for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think when they're thinking about something fresh, the beginning, or starting something, language like that sort of harkens back to this idea of Robert Downey Jr. taking on a new role to me. And they said in this interview that he could only play this part, and the digging sort of led to this idea of, does this have something to do with his death in Avengers Endgame? And they kind of got right up to the line of saying actually kind of does. Like, that's why they felt like Downey was the best person to bring in, because there is a connection to the Iron Man of it all across the universe and whatever. So to me, when I hear that and I know that and I have that context, I tend to think that they are not suggesting that they are trying to reboot the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that they are suggesting that they are telling a new story for a character, Doctor Doom, that they will build these movies on, that he is, I guess, in effect, the main character of these stories. And that is the beginning that we're talking about here. But, you know, that won't stop the headlines, that won't stop the hot takes, that won't stop that from running wild. So kind of zooming out on it and looking at it that way, I think these comments probably got a little bit overblown in the fandoms, as comments usually do. But I think we're probably looking at a situation where maybe when we look back, we'll kind of be like, well, yeah, obviously they weren't talking about rebooting the MCU, which has decades of characters and stories and shows and things confirmed for the future and contracts and all kinds of other things wrapped up in it.
That's an interesting take. I think that they're rebooting my MCU, and I'm really mad about it. They're doing it, guys. They're getting rid of decades of storytelling. Why would they do this? No, I'm just kidding. No, I think you're right. They didn't say like a new beginning to the universe. They just said it's a beginning story, I think was one of the words they said. Like that they told an ending story and this is a beginning story. To me, I've been thinking less of a reboot and more like this is the new Avengers 1. You know, like this we've seen the Avengers 1 kind of kicked off the connection. Like, you know, we'd had post-credit scenes that led into it, but and that's what we've had up till now. It's gone 3 full phases without that fully coming together, but I'm hoping that this Doomsday and Secret Wars brings all these characters together, and we really see what this universe, or even this multiverse, which is the multiverse saga after all, looks like when it comes together, and we see all these worlds touching each other for real. Just like we've seen these hints through phase 1, and then finally we got the fullness of the Avengers. And how cool would it be to see the fullness of the multiverse really laid out and all the characters coming back and doing their thing? I'm excited for it. The reboot fears, to me, haven't gotten any worse from these statements, but it is Secret Wars, and in comics they do kind of reboot. So like, I think a reboot is possible, but I don't think we're going to lose the characters. I think the characters we care about, the characters that the audience wants to continue, will continue. And we will have, even if it's a slightly different universe or they've restructured it somehow, characters like Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange, Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, like all these characters that we care about, I think will continue into whatever movies, unless they, perish very sadly.
I mean, comics tell the stories of these characters. I think about it when I read comics for source pages, like, oh, I'm reading this 2015 comic and Tony Stark's in it, and Tony Stark's been in comics for decades, and your mind just shifts to this like mindset of like, that's still the same character that it's always been, because it's this weird continuous but not linear storytelling. And I kind of think that that's what the MCU is starting to do, and it's different than it was, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean what it was is gone or we're never going to get something like that again, but like when you're reading comics, you kind of have to be ready to go to a next stage of characters and storylines. And so I think that's probably what they're talking about mostly. And if they're going to reboot the MCU, I think it would be a shame to spend decades saying we have a continuous universe and then just like booting it out. Like, that doesn't actually make any sense to me. That would anger fans more than anything. Sure. Yeah. And we can still do the continuity. It just doesn't have to be as heavy. We've talked about that, I feel like, over the last few weeks. Like, you can kind of, like when we were talking about DCU stuff, it's like, oh, well, the Lantern series isn't going to have Clark Kent Superman in it, but it might have Guy Gardner from the Superman movie. So I think that the MCU is going to go that way as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think a soft reboot feels like a possibility, and certainly with Secret Wars. And I think that speaks to the state of the MCU. I think more and more as it's gone on and on and on, it's starting to deal with some of the same problems that you see in the comic books. It becomes a little unwieldy in terms of the continuity, and it becomes a little inaccessible to newcomers. So yeah, I think you'll see them take a, pardon the pun, but a page right out of the Secret Wars comic run, and we will see a new version of the MCU going forward. And I think that feels right. Because as I'm thinking about it, like, I'm 35 years old. The MCU started when I was 18. If it goes on for another 5 years, it'll be more than half my life that this thing has been going on, and I've been, dedicated to consuming almost every piece of it. But
hey, we got to the existential dread part of the podcast pretty early this year.
Yeah, unexpectedly.
Check it off on your bingo cards.
But the interview the Russos had with this YouTube outlet was pretty extensive, and they had a lot of comments. But some of the things I found interesting, and they were things that we kind of knew already, but to hear them say it, for instance, like they talked about how we knew that after Quantum Mania that summer that there was kind of a summit, a corporate retreat, kind of a meeting of the minds to get together and say, like, how are we going to right the ship, right? And that is when the decision to bring in Robert Downey Jr. was made. But they revealed that Robert Downey Jr. reached out to them and asked them to come back and direct this thing earlier on. And they initially were resistant. They were like, no, we don't really see a way in. And it wasn't until after some time they broached Stephen McFeely, and he called them back the next day and said he had a story and that he could crack it. So they're saying, that's what brought them back, the right story, right? So we still don't know what that story is. But they did go to great lengths to say that, they love a villain that sees himself as the hero, right? And they are dedicated to bringing a 3-dimensional character. That is their primary focus here. So I have seen, the worst of the clickbaity YouTubers kind of take those comments and say, oh, this means this and this and this. This means that the Tony Stark that we saw throughout the Infinity Saga was actually a Doom variant. Maybe, but I don't think so at all. And I personally would not like that. But again, I bank on the fact that this version of Doom does have to be connected to Tony Stark in some fashion. So I still don't know if it's the right move to let us know more about that or to really keep us in the state of like questioning until right up until the movie comes out. But I'm sure we'll have to learn at least a little bit more.
Oh yeah, we're gonna watch that trailer when it drops real close and see all the. Well, that wall is shaped like this, and that looks like the entrance from this one What If episode that connects to this multiversal thing that Kang did. So therefore, it's gonna be nuts, and it's gonna be fun, man. This is my favorite time of the year,
Oh, yeah.
And by that I mean like when there's an exciting movie happening, which is all the time. You just watched a clip from Multiverse News. If you liked it, go to our channel. We got a whole episode that it comes from. So go check that out and hit the like and subscribe. And we got lots of clips you'll enjoy, but also full hour-long episodes of Multiverse News with lots of things that don't even make it to clips. So check us out.
You stay clippy.